Welcome. I'm doing something just a little bit different. This little video is actually all about how to make this cute little Bouffant Surgical Cap. Lisa Shepherd has contacted me to ask me how to make one. So I drafted a little bit of a pattern for it, and now this is all about the video on how I made it. So I'll give you a little turnaround here so you can just have a look at what I'm doing. So I think these would be very popular. Lisa was saying that she is a nurse, and she wears them as a surgical nurse, and also she has patients, cancer patients and that kind of thing, that ask about being able to buy them or whatever. So obviously they have a lot of uses. I've had someone write to me that their chef wears a hat very similar to this. So there's probably a lot of uses. They're very, very simple to make. And I hope you enjoy the little video about how I made mine. And maybe we can get something going here with starting maybe a donation type thing to get these made and donate them to cancer care is kind of where my mind is going with this. So I think it would be a very worthwhile cause, and we'll see what happens there and how much interest there is in doing something like that. So again, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoy the video. I really hope you enjoy making some of these because they're a lot of fun to do. It's a little bit different than what I have been doing with my bag making, but it is kind of a nice little break. So feel free to join me on my Facebook group, Friends of Debby Hunker. We do a lot of bag making stuff there, but there's other things there too, just about women empowering each other and being supportive of each other, and it's a lot of fun. So as well, I do sewing retreats for bag making right now, and something that you might be interested in as well. So please join me there, and thank you so much. So these are the two pattern pieces that we're going to be using for making this little Bouffant surgical hat. So I have, this is my one pattern piece. Of course, when I cut this was folded in half. And then for the band, I worked with this one. It was folded in half this way. I do have it interfaced already. So this is where we're actually going to be starting on this. A little bit about the interfacing. I have chosen to interface this whole piece. Now, if you want, you can just do half of the piece. What I would suggest though is, if you're going to do it that way, make sure that if you have directional fabric, that kind of stuff, or if you've kind of fussy cut so that you have one half of this is going to be the outside, the side that people that are looking at you when you're wearing it, that's what they're going to see. If you're going to use half, interface that piece. I don't know how much difference it'll make aesthetically later on. This is the one that I made, that I took the picture of. This is kind of my little prototype. Now when I look at this from the outside, on this one I interface the inside. What I've found is it's ghosting. I can see the seam allowance in there. I can see a little bit of the pattern and stuff like that through here. And I don't want that. I find this side actually looks much nicer. So again, it's just a little detail, but I'm choosing to go ahead and interface the whole thing. Then I don't even have to worry about that. I'm using a lightweight woven interfacing. I'm using Presto, but it is the equivalent of SF101. So it's a lighter weight. It does give it a nice body, and even when it's folded in half like this, so it's doubled, I don't find that it's too stiff or anything. I think it has a very nice feel to it. Has a thick, kind of a rich feel to it. So I like that. So with this pattern piece, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to fold it in half, widthwise, and I'm going to mark. So I had some technical difficulties, so I'm redoing this, but I have some marks there. So, so I'm going to find my centers. You can mark both sides. That way they're done. You don't have to worry about it again. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half and I'm going to press. I'm going to determine which side is going to be my outside and which side is going to be inside. This fabric that I'm using isn't really very directional. Kind of has writing that goes every which way, but I just decided I liked this side. So what I'm going to do on the other side then is I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it back 1/4 of an inch. We're going to be using 3/8 inch seam allowances for the rest of the hat. One thing is that if I use a 3/8 inch seam allowance on this side, when this gets folded over, and you'll see that, I'll point it out to you when we get that far, this is going to extend just like 1/8 of an inch past my seam allowance. So it's going to be easier when I'm top stitching to catch that so that everything gets top stitched in. But that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to re-press this down and press all the way around here and go from there. So now I have this edge, my back edge or my inside edge is folded back 1/4 of an inch and pressed, and the length is in half as well and pressed down. So I can set this aside. The next piece that we're going to be going to is, this is the piece that's going to form the cap. So with this one, you have a couple of choices. My preference is to make pleats. If you want, you can put a gathering stitch all the way around, just this curved part right here, and gather this in to fit. Now, I'll give you the instructions for the pleats, but of course, you just do it the way that you want to. So again, I'm going to fold this in half, and I'm going to mark my center. I do have a little bit of a mark there, but okay. Now, on my wrong side, this is just the system that that I like, and again, you can do what you want. I'm going to go around, actually, all the way around here, and I'm going to mark 1 inch intervals. These do not have to be perfect. They don't have to be exactly 1 inch. There is going to be some fitting in, and you'll see that when I actually show you how I'm making my pleats and stuff. All of this, these little pleats and that kind of thing, they're not going to make the difference. The precision, the precision of your pleats is not going to be what makes this project attractive or not. You're not even going to notice it, even if you're using gathering stitches. If your gathers aren't perfect, it's not going to mean that, oh, you're going to see that and it's not going to look good. I'm starting at the top here and I'm going around. My hope is that by the time I get to the ends, they'll be sort of even. But again, it really isn't, that's not really the important thing here. The important thing for me is that I have some marks that just give me a little bit of reference. I have, when I was drafting my pattern and I was looking at lots of other patterns and instructions and that kind of thing, this is not original. I've done my own thing based on what I saw. So I guess in that it's my pattern, but it's just I've kind of picked and chosen from other people's ideas what I think will work. So, and I have seen in doing this, doing my little bit of research and stuff,
that, like some just said, oh, just take about 6 pleats around the outside. There was really no measurements, no anything to give you an idea. This is just the way that I like to do it. So if you want to, you can go ahead and serge this edge if you want. I'm trying to do everything without using my serger because there's so little to actually be sewn on this. All I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this up a 1/4 inch. I'm going to show you a little trick that I've been trying to remember to teach my students and stuff at my retreats. It's really minor, but it works really, really well. And it doesn't matter what length what measurement you're using. I want to turn this up a 1/4 inch, but I don't want to turn it up. If I want it really nice and perfect, which again, this doesn't need to be, but this is just kind of a little bit of a lesson here. If I want this to be a 1/4 inch, I don't want to have my seam gauge over and make sure that everything is even. So whatever your measurement is, if you're going to be doing a 1/2 inch hem, same idea. Double the length of the measurement that you want. So I want a 1/4 inch folded up. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to add a 1/2 inch, I'm going to mark a line. Then when I actually go to fold this up to press it, all I have to do is fold that to my line and press, and I know that that is going to be a 1/2 inch, or sorry, a 1/4 inch hem. Easy peasy. If you're going up 1/2 inch, of course, then you're going to draw 1 inch line and fold it up to that 1 inch line, and then you'll end up with a 1/2 inch. So very useful in bag making and stuff like that as well. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is I'm just going to press this up. Okay, so this is pressed. Again, this doesn't really have to be too precision. What I'm going to end up doing on this edge, this is the part where my elastic is going to go into. So instead of serging, I prefer to actually hem it so that I can fold this in. We don't do this now, but later on, I'm just kind of showing you while I have everything nice and flat, that I'm going to have just a little 6-inch piece in here, and this is going to get folded up once more and sewn across here. As far as I'm concerned, what this does is it's making doubly sure that no elastic is going to, if there's a little bit of hair on the neck, anything like that, that elastic tends to pull on. We don't want that, so I want everything to be just as soft as possible. So that's why this is going to get ended up into the seam or into the hem here a little bit better, and there's no chance of the elastic showing. So I'm going to show you what I did here. Some of what I'm doing here, I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants and just doing this as I go. On my original, I didn't finish this seam. I didn't serge it or anything. If you have your serger out all the time, then yeah, it's easy enough just to serge that little one. I don't have zigzag on my Juki. I have the TL 2010Q, and it doesn't have zigzag. It's a straight stitch only. It just does it really, really well. So I love it. So what I've done was I just adapted this just a little bit, and I've done just a little French seam on here. So if you're not familiar with that, and if it's something that you think you might want to give a try to, the same thing, we're going to use those dots that we marked earlier. Nothing changes there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with my wrong sides together. I'm going to line that up. This can be open, doesn't matter. What I'm going to look at, sorry, I'm going to flip this over. This was the dot that I had made earlier, so that my stitching only comes up to here. So I have my wrong sides together, and I'm going to make a really tiny little seam right along the edge there, about 1/8 of an inch or so, and I'm going to stop even with my dot. So that's what I'm going to go and do right now. Now hopefully you can see my stitching line here. It's just very tiny, but it's about 1/8 of an inch or so. And I've just done a little stitching line across here. Now I'm just going to trim some of those little stragglers off there. Now I'm going to turn this so that I have my right sides together. And I'm going to give this a little bit of a press. Just gonna move that out. So I'm just gonna press this seam flat. So this is what I end up with. Now here is my dot. And because I've used a very, very narrow seam allowance on the inside here, I shouldn't end up catching any of that, the raw edge there. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to stop at the dot here, and I'm just going to try and estimate and keep a nice straight seam there. Again, it's not the precision in this project that's going to make it, going to make a huge difference in how attractive it is. Once again, I can trim that little thread off there. Not that that makes a difference either. So this is now, I don't have any raw edges. This is the inside, but I have that little French seam there, so it's all finished off. And I stopped here, so this is still nice and open for what I need to do with it later. And when I turn it to the outside, it looks really nice too. So I'm going to just give that a little bit of a press, keep my seams nice and flat. Not that it makes a huge difference, but I'm pressing mine in toward each other. So this is what we end up with. This is the bottom, in the back. What this ends up being is this little part right here. So this is, we end up putting our elastic in there. But it's formed these little, I don't know, it's almost like a little pocket. What it does is it takes out a lot of the bulk. It allows for, like in a surgical unit or something like that, like for hair, without having a whole bunch of gathers and bulk in here. So, so there, that's that part of it. Now we're going to go to the actual pleating itself. So I'm going to go right sides together, and I'm going to pin at centers. Now I have all my marks here. This is going to give me my references, just so that I have an idea of my distances. I like for my pleats to be fairly even, but that's just a personal thing. It's not that it's going to make a huge difference later on. And going from both ways, I'm going to pull and pleat over toward the inside. And then I'm going to pin. And I'm just going to keep doing that. I'm going to go down one side and then go the other way. And there will probably be a little bit, when I get to the very end here, there's probably going to be a little bit that I have to kind of work with. Just kind of shift around, because this is not a pattern that I have spent a huge amount of time on. And again, it doesn't really make any difference. It's not a couture cap. And a little bit of difference in your pleats isn't going to make any difference. So right at the end here, I have just a little bit that I have to play with. I'm not quite even. I'm going to end up just moving this over just slightly. I don't know if I really have a great explanation as to a reference. I think sorry, I'm just kind of working this out on my own too here. So if I go estimate about 3/8 of an inch, that's where I want those seams to line up. So that's probably about right. So I've taken out, I'm just going to put a pin in here so that that holds it in place. So you can see this is my mark here for my pleat. Now I'm over. My pleat, that last pleat is going to be bigger. Now it's not going to make any difference at all. So I'm just going to fit that in there and just put a little pleat in. And the other side might be different just because human error. So now I'm at the other end and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to mark or pin this at my 3/8 inch from the end of, so if this was my fabric piece, I'm going 3/8 of an inch from the edge here. And I have, again, I have a bigger pleat here. No problem. So now when I sew, now it might be a little hard to see, but I've got my stitching comes up to here. So I'm going to start, I'm not going to run this over. I don't want to close this up in any way. So I'm going to start here, going to back stitch, and I'm going to go all the way around all my pleats, 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to stop right here at that dot as well, where my stitching starts. So I've sewn all the way around, all my pleats are in. I'm going to make a note of this. When you start off, this is my center mark. You will end up with your pleats meeting here, and then they look more spread out after. That's it fits in the best that way. What you end up with as well when you turn this out is you kind of have this little center pleat, and then the pleats go out. Sorry, bumping you here. The pleats kind of go out each way from there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to, okay, we've got this folded over. We can, actually, I guess I should press this first. So essentially I'm going to end up pressing this seam allowance toward the band. I find for something like this, because of the bulk or the pleats and stuff in here, using my seamstress ham it helps just to be able to get some. I'll go get it here and I'll show you. I don't need to show you how I press this, but when you make a dressmaker's ham, that's what it is. So when I'm going to press this down, sometimes because of the roundness and all of that kind of stuff, it's nicer to be able to place it on something like this that you can wrap it around. I very often will even just hold on to this and not have it laying on my ironing board. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to give this a good press. This is what I end up with. It's all nice and flat this way. Now I'm going to pull this over. So I'm going to be working kind of a little bit from both sides. Of course, pins are never where they're supposed to be. So I'm going to make sure that this is tucked under, but really where I want to make sure that I position it from, and where I want my pins is on the outside, because when I top stitch, I'm going to be top stitching from this side. So hopefully you can see this here. I'm also, because I've got a 3/8 inch seam here, but I've only folded this up 1/4 of an inch. So really my 1/4 inch, or this fold, the side, this piece right here is going to be a little bit longer. So it's just going to hang over ever so slightly over this stitching line, which is exactly what I want it to do. I want to make sure that when I top stitch this, that I'm not missing the back. But I also don't want it such a huge piece that this is hanging way over and can fold in and stuff like that. The other alternative to folding this under would be to serge this, but again, I don't want to mess around with my serger. I think this looks more professional. I think it would be softer against the skin than having some serging and stuff like that. And it really doesn't take much. So I'm just going to continue to pin this all the way to my corner. And this I'm going to, because I've left this open, when I get to the very corner, if I need to trim some bulk out of there, I will. Once I get this far, this piece, the reason why we've left this open is because then I can fold this over, wrap it around, and when I sew my elastic in, everything is going to be, well, that will be inside here, but everything will be finished. So I'm just going to continue on pinning this where I need it to be. So I have everything pinned in. It all looks very nice, feels good, feels nice and flat. I trimmed out, just on the one edge I seem to have the seam allowance from where I pleated. On this one edge, there just seemed to be a little extra bulk there, so I just trimmed a little bit of that out. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch, and I'm actually going to do like about an 1/8 inch, but I'm going to go the brim, I'm going to go all the way around the whole thing. So my top stitching is done. You can do 2 rows, you can do whatever you want as far as your top stitching goes. Fancy stitches, the sky's the limit. So I have the outside done, everything on the inside. I managed to catch everything. Here it's a little bit bigger. I've got a little bit more room here, but I'm still okay. I've caught everything, so that's the main thing, and it's nice and smooth still. So now the last thing that we need to deal with is the elastic. So again, this is going to be something that I guess you'll have to play around with. I found for myself using this elastic, 6 inches of elastic was a good place to start for me. You may want to modify that however you want to as well, but for me, this is what works. So I'm going to place my elastic inside. I'm going to fold this over. And it's going to get, well, it's not really tricky. That's not really the right word for it, but you'll have to do a few things at the same time here. So I'm going to just fold the whole thing over so that it all looks finished here. I've got some threads hanging out here. Oops. Don't drop your elastic. Try that again here. So on the one end, we're going to just do this for now. So fold that in. Everything's all nice and tucked in. Make sure all of this is tucked as well. And then I'm going to go over. Now what I could do before I even go any further at all, if I have this placed where I want it, I could just do a little stitch across right here just to hold that in place. And actually, you know what, that's going to be what I'm going to do. It's very tiny to be able to pin. So at this point, before we try to even stretch this elastic and stuff, I'm just going to do a few stitches in here just so that it stays. So I'm going to tell you, I tried this once. Now I've unpicked it. I should have shown you. When I had this folded over and everything, I did a little stay stitching here, but when it came out, this had pulled out. So I don't want that. I want to make sure everything is done properly. So again, now I have a whole bunch of things that I have to do all at the same time. And I'm just going to trim some threads away from here. So to cut down on how many things I have to be keeping track of all at the same time, what I'm going to do is this needs to be folded over. I can see from this side that I would need this. Get my fingers out of the way here. I need this to stay. So I'm going to get this in the position and I'm just going to put a couple stitches here. Then I'm going to go back to my elastic. All right. So what I've done is I've just got some stitches here. I don't even care about back stitching and all of that kind of stuff. I just want it to hold in place for now. Again, be careful. I know it's your favorite word of mine, is to yard. To yard means to pull too hard or to jerk, or that's what it is. So we don't want to yard on this because I've just got a few stitches just holding this in place so I don't have to pin it and that kind of stuff. We're using very small space here. So I'm going to get all of the stray stuff out of the way. Now I'm going to try again with my elastic. So I'm going to tuck this in, fold this over, and then everything gets folded over again. So now if I put some stitches along here, I should have everything including my elastic. Boy, oh boy, make sure my elastic is, no, it moved. So I want to tuck that right in tight into that corner right here. And fold that over. Now this doesn't mean that I have to do my stitching like 1/8 of an inch. I could do it over a little bit just to make sure that I catch, get a really good catch on that elastic. So I'm going to try this again. Okay, so mission accomplished. So I've just got some stitches in here. It's all tucked in. It's all finished here. My elastic is secured. I'm going to make sure that my elastic isn't twisted or anything. And I'm going to go over to the other end. Now this is where it's not going to get too tricky, but I need to make sure this is folded in. Now it feels right, it feels good, like I have everything there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try and just do it again, just a little bit of top stitching there. So what I'm doing really is I'm securing both ends of my elastic. I'm not worried right now about sewing this in. So okay, so now I have this side is secured as well. This side actually is a little bit wider maybe than this side is, no big deal. What I'm more concerned with is that this is nice and even right there. So, oh, oh great, there's a blooper for us. So, and you know what, this is going to happen. I didn't catch enough of my elastic, so I'm glad it happened now and not when I'm trying to sew the whole thing in. Not to worry, what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this in and I'm going to tuck this in. Again, I want to make sure that I'm underneath, that it's in the fold. And that may take some doing. Get this folded over. And I'm going to throw a pin in here. So I've got everything. My elastic is going to hold in there now. When I sew my elastic, now again, this is not the ideal situation. I would have rather had my elastic sewn really well into this, but I can feel that it's here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put some more stitches just right here. It's not worth taking all of this out and trying over again. And well, I mean, that's my feeling about it. It's kind of, you're not going to see the spots on the rump of a galloping horse, as I have been told. So minor thing, but I'm going to fix it and make sure that it's functional. So there I go. So now I've got about 1/4 of an inch. I know that I have that elastic is in there better. And you know what? My little fix here isn't going to make any difference. So I have 2 little rows of stitching. For one thing, it's going to be underneath the hat. You're not even going to see it. And it doesn't take away from anything. So now, however you want to do this, I'm going to make sure that my elastic is inside here. I'm going to roll this. This kind of sometimes takes a little bit of wangling. I don't feel, when I do this, I need to get this positioned and held in place a little bit. So when I sew this, I have it pinned. I'm going to just make sure that this is kind of held here. When I'm actually sewing, I always stop in needle down position. So my needle, because I'm not going to be pulling on it super hard, my needle will hold this so that if this thumb was my needle holding, I can pull this back gently and then reposition things, get things tucked in as I'm sewing, and then grab onto the back and pull through. So I thought this part of it I would actually show you just what I mean. So I'm going to get positioned first of all, and I'm going to try and be kind of over on the edge here. It's hard to show this way. So just going to get going, just going to do a back stitch. Now my needle is down, so it's going to hold things in place. So I can use my other hand to tuck things in, move things around a little bit, make sure that I have my elastic nicely folded in here. Then I'm going to go to the back here. I'm going to grab onto it with my hand or with my fingers here, so that when I lift that needle up, that I'm not losing the tension on everything. So I'm just going to keep a gentle tension, keep that elastic stretched out. Again, This machine always stops in needle down, which is just, I couldn't live without that feature anymore. And again, I don't want to run over my pins. So I'm going to stretch this out, get things positioned, get behind, keep it taut. So there I go. So now nowhere can you see my elastic. Everything is completely folded in here. I just have this gentle elastic piece at the back. And again, you can adjust this to how tight you want it. But that's what seemed for me. I think I have probably an average size head. I don't think I have a big one. I don't have a really tiny one either. But I think it's more just to kind of keep it positioned more so than actually being clamped down tight on your head. So that's that. So this is the cap. This is how it ends up turning out. And I think it looks really cute. One thing that if you find, if you're making a lot of them and they need to be a little bit different size, I guess there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to put sewing into that seam or on top or something, is to put little ties that could then actually be, pull that a little bit tighter. But that's just one of those things, I guess, that you'd have to play around with and see what the needs are. But what I do like about it is that everything is finished on this one, even those little pleats. And no elastic is showing, nothing. So, so I hope you have enjoyed my little tutorial on making that this hat. Thank you so much to Lisa for suggesting or asking me if I would do a tutorial on it. And I hope everybody enjoys it. If you enjoy this instruction that I've given, please feel free to share it with your friends. Again, I also have my Facebook group, Friends of Debby Hunker, and you're more than welcome to join us there. It's more geared a little bit to bag making, which is a growing craft, and we really enjoy ourselves over there. So anyway, that's that, and thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again soon.